Men who have found out their child isn't actually theirs. How did you react? And how are things now? Story 1. My kids ran into their real father on MySpace and invited me out to a nice restaurant. When they told me they had something serious to reveal and they'd invite me here so I wouldn't make a scene, I started to worry that they were banging each other. But then my ex-wife showed up. Anyway, once we got settled down, they told me about how the real father had contacted them on MySpace and had dozens of pictures of himself with my ex-wife from the time a year or so before she had the twins. My ex-wife chimed in that she'd had an affair with him, and he didn't have money, so she decided it would be easier to just let me think the twins were mine. I lost it. I began shouting with uncontrollable rage and sorrow. I asked every man nearby if he had banged my wife. The twins and my ex-wife told me not to make a scene as I shouted that my life was a lie. "Jesus, Frank," that turkey neck said as if I was the one out of line. "Oh, Jesus, Frank." I bellow over and over again in angst. Then I had a heart attack. Anyway, things are a lot better now. I bought half of the bar from the man who I used to think was my son, the man who thinks he's my son, and their friend's own, and now we work together along with a woman I thought was my daughter. It's a lot of fun. The whole gang is crazy. My ex-wife passed in a botched neck lift surgery, so I guess that's a happy ending for all of us. Glad everything worked out in the end, but Jesus, Frank, who says that? Story 2. I found out the kid wasn't mine and I was furious. I had suspected it because his hair and eyes were a different color than mine, and he just flat out looked nothing like me, so I got a blood test. The conversation I had with my wife that night will forever haunt me. Me. So I just went to the doctor. Her. You okay? Me. No, I'm not okay, because I just received this. Her. A blood test? Me. Care to explain why my DNA doesn't match your child's? Her. Because I'm infertile and we adopted? Me. That's no excuse, you cheat. Who are you sleeping with? Her. We literally adopted him yesterday. Me. Oh, he was black, wasn't he? Couldn't go back, right? Well, I'm waiting. Her. Go to sleep, babe. Me. Go to heck, you cankerous wank. I left her and I've been single ever since. I don't think I could trust any woman after that ordeal. Story 3. Didn't make it that far, but had a little fling with a girl who I was honest and upfront with. It was a fling and wasn't going to be serious. She agreed to it. So one time we were getting it on. Broke. I told her and she didn't seem too worried. Mind you, this was way before the climax when I noticed. Also, I know there was no I had that when I put the new one on. Made sure that everything was good afterwards. Fast forward a couple of weeks and she messages me saying she's preggo. I admit my heart jumped a little, but I called her as calm as a British bloke drinking tea. She was so surprised that she asked why I wasn't freaking out and getting angry or panicking. Truth is, I knew that the likelihood of her being pregnant was very slim, and either way I would man up no matter what. I asked her all the details. Was I the only one? Have you been drinking since the last time and all that good stuff? I told her I wasn't ready for that, but the ultimate decision was hers to make. She started saying how she would never do such a thing, and I stayed calm. Told her we would talk in the morning. I was just meeting up with my boys to go to a party. She was shocked even more that I was still so calm, and started asking where I was going because she was going out with her friends too. I didn't tell her. After that, I knew for sure she was trying to push my buttons. So the next day I spoke to her and she told me she has to think about it. I said, take your time. Eventually, a few days later, she said she was not going to keep it, and that she booked an appointment with her doctor who was in another city and over an hour away. She doesn't drive, and so I offered to give her a ride. She declined and said a friend would give her one. I said I want to be there at least. She said all she could to convince me that I don't need to go with her, so I backed off. I know where she worked, and she worked all day the day she was supposed to go, but she messaged me saying that she went and that she couldn't walk properly after. I played along and never spoke to her again. Wow, it's so amazing that you offered to give her a ride and how calm you were despite you knowing what was up. But man, that was close. Story 4. I found out at my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner a couple of years ago that my dad wasn't my biological father. He died the summer before, so he never knew. When I asked my mom who my real father was, she said, it might be so-and-so, or it might be so-and-so, or it might be this guy I had a one-night stand with whose name I never knew. Story 5. Back in the 80s, a good friend got a girl pregnant around the same time my own girlfriend stopped taking the pill without telling me. So now we're two young musicians stuck with dad jobs we weren't looking for, no other friends or babies, so we start hanging out together more. Taking the kids and girlfriends to the park and playgrounds, etc. I didn't really know his new girlfriend before, but I started to see what a bad mom she was. He appeared to be doing all the caring and parenting while she just picked fights with him and ignored her own daughter. I didn't see them for several weeks and somebody told me he was in county jail, accused by his girlfriend of taking advantage of his own 18-month-old daughter. It made zero sense to me. I didn't go visit him because I had warrants, so I didn't see him for about 5 months. Finally, I ran into him at a show. He'd lost all his front teeth from beatings in the county because predator, but he seemed positive and happy because he was declared not guilty at his trial. Apparently, the girlfriend overstated her false accusation by claiming to have seen him taking advantage of their daughter. A medical examiner checked the child and ruled that was impossible, so the case fell apart. He was in the process of trying to get visiting rights to see his kid when the mom suddenly stated it wasn't actually his child. He insisted on a DNA test and learned that she wasn't lying this time. He never saw that little girl again. No legal consequences for the mom, and he took his life years later. His not daughter's name still tattooed on his arm.
Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs. Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description.
Story 6. So this is my brother's story and I felt the need to share. He, let's call him Eric, had a son with a crazy user woman. She ended up sleeping with our other brother, let's call him Matt, around the time she got pregnant. She told him this after my nephew was 3 and started to look almost exactly like her brother Matt at that age. I know, family genetics. The thing is that Matt and Eric have different dads and Matt definitely looks like his father, just like my nephew had started to. Well, he had gotten the DNA test set up after he had found out and was absolutely upset by the news and didn't exactly know how to handle it. Finally, he decided that he wasn't going to go through with it. He said that he loved him no matter what and that he was his son regardless of what the results were. He said it would devastate him to find out that it was biologically his and had to give custody over to Matt when Matt wanted nothing to do with him. Eric went as far as to get complete custody from this woman and loves that kid more than anyone could imagine. I love my brother, and I think he did the right thing for both of them, no matter what anyone else says. You know what? This seems like the worst kind of brother bro code violation someone could ever do. That's just nuts. But you're a good dad, man. Cheers to you. Story 7. This happened to be a really good friend of mine. He was a teenager at the time, getting ready to go to university for the first time, broke up with his ex who came to him a few weeks later and told him she was pregnant, that it was his. He immediately accepted it and dropped out of university before he even started it. Got a full-time job, took care of her all through her pregnancy, got everything they needed for when the baby arrived. He was even in the delivery room when the baby was born. Upon birth, his ex wavered and asked for a paternity test. All this time, the kid wasn't even his. He stuck around for about a month before he realized that this wasn't his burden to bear and re-enrolled in university. He just picked up where he left off and basically got on with life. Story 8. This isn't my story, but my cousin's. 7 years ago, my cousin married a lovely girl. She got pregnant and they bought a house, fully committed to preparing it for the kid. She passed due to complications during childbirth and the kid, Amy, survived. The cousin spent the next years of his life doing everything possible to be able to provide for his daughter while still being a father. He used to work evening and night shifts and then take a few naps across the day. 2 years ago, it became apparent that while Amy shared features from her mother, she didn't share features from my cousin. He had a paternity test done. Negative. He hasn't told her and we have no idea who the real father might be, but those who have been told, me, his sister, my mother, have agreed that it doesn't matter. We're still actively looking into it just in case of a potential medical issue or something. I don't expect that she'll be told until she's either old enough to understand or old enough to notice the difference. I've been the investigator, and I gotta be honest, I'm really starting to dislike Amy's mother. Story 9. 2 years of DNA tests that the state continually reported as inconclusive, it led to going someplace out of state. Got it done, got the test results back, less than 2% probability of a genetic match. So I called her up, asked, "So, you want to tell me what the real story is?" 2 weeks before we had our night under the sheets that resulted in the talk 9 months later, her father had come home drunk out of his mind and took advantage of her. I still recall the tone of her voice asking me if I'd actually taken the test and that it was real. Well, turns out her mother heard that conversation, notified someone and dad took a DNA test, so her dad is the dad of her kid. And I felt horrible for her. I can't even joke about this. Her dad was arrested. The kid, last I heard, was doing well. It forced her to clean up her act. She'd gone in for heavy substance use and it drove us apart before the child did. And that was 10 or so years ago. We don't talk. Every once in a while I'll think about the kid, but I don't know. This world ain't a nice place. And with all the she'd gone through, I wasn't going to make it worse. So I left it alone. Story 10. Cheated on me, claimed the baby was mine, lied profusely for months about being pregnant and even having cancer. Went and got pregnant after I broke up with her, claimed it was mine, blamed me, went back to saying she had cancer. Now she's a bipolar with a substance problem and everyone knows it. Some people are just taking time bombs. Don't talk to her anymore. Never went back. Story 11. Not my story, but in a way it turned out for the best. I knew a guy who was sort of stuck with a girl he knocked up, and she made him miserable and turned her daughter into a whiny, spoiled brat that hated him. One day, the woman gets drunk and laughs at him, telling him how his daughter isn't really his. He walked out on them, leaving mother and daughter high and dry with no support. The daughter was too spoiled to get a job and is one of the trashiest people you'll ever encounter. Mom's a drunk. Could you imagine that moment when you get a real-life get-out-of-jail-free card? That's unreal. Oh yeah, by the way, if you're liking the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Back to the video. Story 12. I have a mixed-race child. Originally, I was told it was mine until she actually gave birth. Since she was mixed, she came out pretty light-skinned. Very light-skinned, actually. But as she got older, her skin got darker and darker. Let the mother stick around for about a year to 2 years. She wasn't from where we were living and didn't have anywhere else to go. Didn't want to kick the baby out in the streets. Finally, I had enough of her crazy and kicked her out. But I ended up getting attached to the little girl. Fast forward 2 years and I'm single, lonely, depressed, and missing the little girl. I've had no contact with him. Through the grapevine, I hear my little girl's real dad has nothing to do with her. No contact, no father. From the story I get, the real dad was married and refused her. I set up a meeting with my little girl after 2 years to get a feeling on the situation, and it was like those 2 years never happened. She ran up to me like she just saw me yesterday. I talked to the mother and I said that I'll take care of her. We never went to court. No child support has ever been filed. We don't fight about anything. I tell her if she needs anything as far as money or clothes, whatever, I'll take care of it. She's now 10, I'm married, and my wife accepts her with open arms and loves her as I do. She's an awesome kid, great student, no troubles. I have to teach her a bit of humility because all she's concerned about is being beautiful. But if that's my biggest worry with her, I think that's okay. I wouldn't change anything at all. I will tell you one thing. I live in the South, and you would think that a married white couple with 2 normal white kids and an older mixed girl would think you'd get more looks from white folks. Surprisingly, it's the black folks that give us more what the f looks than anything. But as I said, I wouldn't trade her for anything. I love that silly girl. Story 13. Not a man, never been in this situation, but I am the child of one of these situations. My mom got married when she was 17 and had 3 sons with her first husband. I'm going to call him Ben. They were together for a long time, I think about 18 years total. Somewhere along the way, she realized she was caught in a loveless marriage, but couldn't really do anything about it. My dad, who I'll call Dave, moved in across the street and 2 of them started spending time together, and she started an affair with him. They weren't careful enough, and the next thing you know, my mom is pregnant with me. She knew from the get-go it wasn't Ben's, and he kind of had an idea too because they weren't intimate that often and the math didn't work out. But I think he went along with it just because he didn't want to think about what she was doing behind his back. My dad initially didn't want to have anything to do with me, so when I was born, they put down her husband's name on my birth certificate as the father and called it a day. Paternity tests were done though, and my mom confirmed what she already knew. Dave still definitely didn't want to stick with my mom and me, and it was just agreed that Ben would raise me as his and they would forget it happened. He was and is a great guy and an awesome dad. Now, the way I've heard it is Dave, despite his convictions, couldn't stay away because he loved my mom so much, and once he laid eyes on me, he was head over heels. Some of my earliest memories are going to visit him in his apartment. At some point between the time I was 2 and the time I was 3, my mom and Ben divorced. I don't remember it and was largely kept out of it, but I understand it was very messy, because I was legally Ben's daughter. I got the same visitations as my other brothers who were still under 18. My mom and Dave married when I was 4, and Dave was never happy about these visits, but I was because I loved Ben so much. Ben was always daddy, and Dave was dad. It was understood that I never confused the two or made reference to one being my parent in front of the other. Even as a 4- and 5-year-old, I knew the sensitive nature of the situation. It was never confusing either, because they really are 2 very different people who I think provided me with a great balance of paternal figures in my life. As I said, Ben was always daddy. Sweet, endearing, with a heart of gold who just wanted his little girl to be happy and would spoil her rotten to see her smile and make stupid jokes to get a giggle out of her. Dave was dad, still kind and loved me to death, but more of the disciplinarian who I knew not to mess with. My mom's not married to either of them now, another long-winded story entirely, but I consider both of them to be my father, and I consider both of them to have done the best job they could have, and I think I turned out all right. It's refreshing to read a story where the adults involved did what was necessary for the sake of the child. You are very lucky to have had 2 fathers that put your needs ahead of their own. The only thing I can see them really fighting about is who would walk you down the aisle. Story 14. So I'm on the other side of the fence. I was dating this girl for about 3 years, rocky relationship and all that jazz. I broke up with her and moved back to my hometown for a period. While back, she asks if she can come visit, etc. First mistake, but believe me, the deed was really golden between us. Anyway, 2 months after the visit, she's pregnant. Not the best news in the world, but I'm from a family of certain values in these matters, so I own up. After spending a week with her and discussing what to do, I go back home and start preparing stuff. 3 days later, she calls and claims a miscarriage, and we sort of end it, or it dies out, no pun intended, the next few weeks. Fast forward 7 months and I've moved back to the same city, the capital of Norway, Oslo, and continued my career. Suddenly I see a Facebook post about this girl getting a child, 9 months and 2 days after her visit. It turns out she had been dating another dude for the whole 3 years we had been dating. They even lived together for 2 of the years. She kinda just decided that she felt better with him as the dad. So basically, she convinced him he was the dad. So he announced it to the whole world and was just about to go on fatherly leave when I found out. I quietly asked her for a paternity test and to no surprise, it stated with 99% that I'm the father. Stuff unravels, he's not happy, obviously. It has to tell the world that nope, just kidding, I'm not a dad. Anyways, 4 years later it's all good and we have 50% shared custody. But damn, it was a few funky months in the start. Story 15. At first, I was devastated, but then she explained how an angel appeared and put God's baby in her. It made perfect sense and I was so relieved. When I tell the story to the guys at work, they point out holes in the story. You should throw the baby in the water and see if it works. Then you'll know the truth. Story 16. This happened to my best friend, yet he loves his son so much I can't even express it in words. It's as if the news actually united them more in an everlasting bond of love than if he had been the boy's biological father. They need one another, in the best sense, and all our friends witness this truth and depth of commitment. Story 17. Back in college, I was seeing a girl for a while, kinda serious, more so for her than me apparently. She winds up pregnant. I was young and didn't really know what to do, but knew if it was mine, I would do the right thing and be the father. Major caveat. I have a physical condition that makes it highly unlikely that I can actually get anyone knocked up, and she knew this. Anyway, she swears up and down through the whole pregnancy that it could only be mine, so I went along with it. I was out of town the weekend kiddo was born. She apparently tried to reach me, but this was long before cell phones, and I had gone home to a different city with a college friend to party, and in all likelihood avoid home during that time frame since I was reasonably sure it wasn't mine. Kiddo was born, I went to see them a few times over the next few weeks. Then shortly after that, I got a call from my folks that she had stopped by their house and introduced it to them as their new grandson, etc. They were ecstatic and happy for me, and all the fun stuff they anticipated about being new grandparents. I had to basically put the brakes on really hard at that point and tell them I was pretty sure that it was not my kid. I pretty much knew after I saw it. One look at it and there was just no connection at all. It was a baby, but I saw nothing there I recognized as mine in any way, shape, or form. Due to the fact that she was already on the dole, the state mandated a paternity test. I figured I just might as well get it over with and showed up for the appointment when they told me to. Once the results came back, there was a less than 1% chance it was mine. I turned around and never looked back. Only seen her twice since then, and it's been 20 plus years now. But both times she was almost in tears trying to apologize for doing that to me back then. I heard through the grapevine who ended up being the actual father, and he already had a few running around, so he was no help to them at all. Not only that, but his poor health issues put him in an early grave. So that poor kid had no father figure growing up. Thankfully, I kept a level head through the whole ordeal, and even got a letter of commendation from the county prosecutor's office saying that they wished even half the potential fathers were half as cooperative as I had been. If you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have some time, I'm sure you'll love doctors. Have you seen a couple that have a child that was obviously not the father? I still can't get over story 13. See you there.